So the way we're structuring this, thanks for joining, is to the way CPP works, they meet every month. There's like 120, 150, maybe 100 will show up. They meet as a group for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then they break out into subsections. And the last couple times we've met with them, we've had 30 to 40 ninth and 10th graders. And in the beginning section, Jim Severs, who couldn't join us tonight, and I will pitch IYF to the 11th graders as well as to the ninth and 10th graders. We met with the ninth and 10th graders last month, and we got 30 or so people who said they were interested in signing up for IYF. We're looking for an additional group. So we'll do that. We'll break out into the ninth and 10th grade groups and then basically set out this exercise, which I've laid out in the email, which consists of two primary parts. Peter's booklet, which we'll talk about in a minute, and then a template, which is designed to encourage students to actually engage in how they think about dreaming, about what they want to be. And the booklet, I think it's fair to say, Peter, is focused on the 5-year vision, the 10-year vision, the 15-year vision. And what we want to do is to try to use these documents, the booklet and the template, to induce conversations. How do we create opportunities for students to just have these interactions with us to think about their future? And what we found in this last year, which Hunt has participated in, is taking large groups and talking with them doesn't work very well. But in small groups with 1 or 2 kids, 3 kids, 4 kids, and 1 or 2 mentors, they're much more comfortable about talking about these subjects. So what we want to do is use this content to try to induce them to think about subjects that they don't normally think about. Why do I want to go to college? Why do I think about particular careers? Why do I think about particular goals that I have? And our hope is at the end of the day that we've induced conversations that will actually help them to think more broadly about who they are. We did that last month with this exercise that was basically about what are your strengths, what are your interests, how do you combine those with others in your group to create this Play-Doh exercise that combines different interests and strengths into something that would make a difference in the world. And that exercise caused the students to talk together. Last month, we had 40 students and only about 4 volunteers. This time, it's much more conversation. So the reason we've got 10 or 11 volunteers is to have those small groups that will have that conversation with us, 1 or 2 volunteers for 3 or 4 students. So the booklet, which Peter will talk about, is really kind of the kickoff to get students to think about questions that put them outside of the zone that they're normally in school. So Peter, off to you.
Let me just say for those of you who are meeting me for the first time, and I look forward to meeting all of you on Friday, or several of you on Friday. Steve will not appreciate this, but he was a student at our school the first year I was teaching. So I knew Steve when he was a little shaver as a 12th grader. All right. So this takes us back a few years.
I do appreciate that, by the way.
And let me explain the booklet. I taught a course for a number of years called Imagining Your Future, which is where this title comes from. And in that course to high school kids, I found that 2 things were necessary. Number one, it was really helpful to have something in front of you. I once taught a course where the student said to me, "Well, you're going to give us homework?" And I said, "Yes." And I said, "What did you think we were going to do?" And they said, "I thought we were just going to talk." Well, kids aren't particularly good about just sort of talking. talking. It's really helpful to have something in front of them that they can focus on. So in the course I taught and in the booklet, which is written specifically for Friday, it is a selection of some of the parts of the other 8 booklets that Steve and I have been putting together this spring. So the booklet is a way it's something they're going to have in their hands. They're going to be able to read it, I think, fairly quickly, and it will give them something to talk about. Now, my own sense from having taught this kind of course before is number one, you're not teaching content as much as you're teaching yourself. I'm stealing that idea from Parker Palmer. A teacher teaches himself or herself more than they're teaching specific content. Therefore, I think it's really important, particularly if there are 2 of us, 2 adults and a small number of kids, that number one, we establish a relationship with the kids whereby they know that one, they can trust us, two, and that we're listening to them. One of the worst things a teacher can do as a person who spent his entire career in a classroom is to march through a lesson plan and have kids sense that, well, what the teacher wants to do is get through the lesson plan. And it doesn't make any difference what we say as long as the teacher can get through the lesson plan. I'm much more comfortable going wherever the kids want to go. The first part of the booklet is, in effect, how you doing? And I'd like to spend some time with the kids, at least in my group, saying, what's on your mind? How are you doing? What do you think about? What are some issues you're facing in your life? Then, if possible, rotate to, okay, when you look ahead in your life, what do you think about? What's on your horizon, your near horizon, your slightly further horizon, and so on. And then there's some things in the booklet which I hope we can focus on, but I'm not personally in my group going to march through a syllabus. I want to know what they're thinking, and if we can use some of the issues in the maybe a cartoon catches their attention. The cartoons are there intentionally to suggest this is not quite as heavy as they might think it is. But secondly, if there's anything in there, what caught your fancy in the booklet? Let's talk about it. And then slowly, maybe we can draw some of the other kids into the conversation. And we hope at the end it sets up the second part of the exercise where they fill in a little chart. But the booklet is just sort of a crutch, one, to establish a relationship, and two, to get them to have some material maybe that they can talk about. But I'm not a teacher who says we need to do point A, point B, point C, and we need to set 3 minutes for this and 4 minutes for that. What I want to do is say, what's going on, and let's look down the road at some issues. When I've done this with students for years, admittedly they're slightly older, the comment I got again and again when I asked kids to evaluate what we had done, admittedly was a 10-week course. The comment I got more often than not was, Teach, I never thought about that. No one ever gave me a chance to think about that. And so if we can, should we say, set a spark off in a kid's head, whoa, you mean I can think about those things, or maybe I should be thinking about those things. Whatever they're thinking about that's looking to the future, we've accomplished something. We've accomplished our goal. We're getting them to think about what lies ahead because kids today, short homily, are so busy with their busyness of life that they don't have time to think the big questions. And so, what we're trying to do is get them to think big, even just for a few minutes, however that goes.
Which
And
booklet are you going to be using? I mean, I've got all 8 of them, and I'm just looking at.
Oh, so Hunt, look at the email I've sent. There is
Oh,
an attachment that has a 20-page version of Peter's booklet. You'll see it draws from several of them.
oh, okay.
And the benefit, what we found this year, as you know, Hunt, we've tried different versions, like a dozen students, 15 students, 7 students in a room. They have their phones. You ask them big questions, they stare at you. But what we found works really well, and Deborah may comment on this, is if you get 3 or 4 students with 1 or 2, especially 2, Peter, it's interesting you said that, volunteers. The volunteers can induce conversation between themselves and then with the students and to create that safe space. and to get them thinking about things where it's not just like, and in CPP, remember, their goal is to go to college. They may not know why. They may not even understand what you need to do, but they're on that march. So our goal is to set back and say, why would you think about college? Why are you thinking about whatever it is that you're doing in the future? And the booklet does that really effectively. So does the template. The template asks, which is the second exercise, basically, what are your dreams? How do you think about the big picture of what you're interested in? What do you like to do? And what things would you think about doing? So it's sort of the practical application of the first half of the conversation. And one of the things that Peter and Jim and I have talked about is at some point when you've had the small group conversations, we might have an opportunity, as we did last month, to have the students and the leaders report. And there may be some groups that want to report, there may be some groups that don't want to report. There will be some students that will be interested themselves in reporting. Sometimes those of us volunteers will report, but to add things to the conversation that others might not have thought about. Because to Peter's point, and I've heard him talk about his classes, students will go off on a tangent that's completely off what we want to do, but it might be incredibly valuable. And we need to be open to that as well.
As a teacher, I hesitate to add. Obviously, you don't walk. I'm a seminar teacher. That's what I did my whole life. I never lectured. Our pedagogy was the teacher was a facilitator of a conversation among 12 kids of different ages. The point is you can't go in with no lesson plan. And you can't just say, well, what do you want to talk about today? You go in with a lesson plan in your head of maybe three or four or five, whatever number of points you want to cover in the time you're given. And then you say, all right, well, if student number one starts on point three, go with it. Roll with point three. Don't say to number one, excuse me, that we're going to get to that point later. Let's go back to my first point. That immediately throttles a kid. And the student is really good at understanding your lesson plan takes precedence over anything they say. So if student says point number three, your job is to figure out how you can help that group get maybe to point four and then maybe back to point one and maybe to point two. I mean, in other words, you wander around and by the end of the session, you may say, well, we never got to point five. Well, so be it. The
Yeah.
point is to have a conversation with the kids. Excuse me. Go ahead, Kimberly.
So I get that totally. And I think that's a certain skill that, some of us probably have better than others. I haven't done this type of facilitating in a while, but can we talk a little bit about, so for tomorrow or Friday, how much time do we have and how should we think about the amount of it? I mean, should we spend the first 15 minutes working and then by the end of it, you want to have it a wrap up period or kind of how do we look at the total time that we have there?
Yeah,
And
so thank you for that. The session starts at 9:45. It'll take 5 minutes for the students to gather. It'll be all 120 to 150 together. Jim Severs and I, who couldn't join today, will pitch IYF to all groups. As I mentioned, a number of the ninth and 10th graders have already signed up potentially. We're pitching to the 11th graders. It's kind of their administrative time. They meet monthly. So that'll take 10 or 15 minutes out of the hour and a quarter. Then they'll devolve into the ninth and 10th grade groups. Jim will introduce the whole topic that we're covering. Peter will cover the booklets. We're going to ask the students then to read the booklets. We don't know how long it will take them to read the booklets. I
okay,
timed,
so Peter's introducing the booklet though.
yes,
That'll happen as a group.
yes,
We're not
as
divided
a
up
ninth,
yet.
as a ninth and 10th grade groups. We don't know how long it will take. It took me 11 or 12 minutes, but I'd read the cartoons, I knew the content. It may take longer. And so one of the things that I think as a bunch of small groups that we need to think about is how long is it taking the students to read them? You can read it yourself and decide. I think we can decide we wait until the last student in our small group reads it, or until they've read far enough that they can contribute to the conversation. So it might be 9 minutes, it might be 12 minutes. Then we want to induce this conversation. What do you think of the booklet? What did it make you think of? What topics do you want? To Peter's point, where do you want to go? And how are you? What's going on with you?
Steve, I think it's important to tell people that the booklet will be printed. They will have it in their hands. They're
Mhm.
not reading it on a phone. So at any point in the conversation, they can turn the page and reference what's right in front of them.
Mhm.
Our goal is to have it on phone. Um, the people who are around Heresy could think it's not a good idea to do it in this session because they'll go off on TikTok. Um,
Right.
we'll see
Are
if
you
that.
going to print up the booklet you're talking about? One is called "Imagining Your Future," April 25
That's
CPP
it.
work.
Yep.
That's the one.
It's
Or
Yes.
there's another one here. There's "Dreams After the Future." Is that?
that's the template. I'll get to that in a minute.
Oh, okay. All right. Fine.
So the thought is each group will decide whether they let every student finish it or get far enough. Maybe it's done in 9 minutes, maybe it's done in 15 minutes, but you want to have a conversation. So we'll have about an hour, is my guess, maybe 50 minutes, 55 minutes. I'd like to spend most of the time on the conversation around this, but the template is the impact point. It's like you've taken this conversation, and what are you going to write or draw that comes out of that conversation? And if we have time after the booklet, we'll have an all group conversation where each small group reports. If we don't, which we may not, we'll wait and just go right to the template. Jim Severs will introduce that. We'll have the students spend 5 minutes or so writing and drawing and have another group conversation. And it'll be, what did you write or draw in the template? What did you think? What were your reactions? What do you think about how the booklet affected those things that you put into the template? So we'll have that group conversation, the small group conversation. And then at that point, whether or not we've done the large group, we'll ask each group to report those that want to. That's what we did in the Play-Doh exercise in that 3-minute video I posted in the first email. Each group reported. We weren't sure if they would. They did it enthusiastically. And the benefit of that is that, as Peter says, some groups will just go off, way off to the left. Some will go upstairs and they'll explore this. Some will stay within the confines. So I think there's some benefit to everybody hearing how different groups reacted to it.
But we're not doing the Play-Doh exercise, are we?
No, there's no Play-Doh this
No.
time.
So that template is the final product of the conversation.
That
But
is the
everybody's
tactile
template is
version.
their own personal template.
Yes,
So it's not a group think. It's really their own individual thoughts about what they want to do.
exactly.
That may not be as easy to present as the group Play-Doh, you know?
Agreed, although we'll be interested to see if what I'm about to say is right. Hopefully, when they contribute each of them after they've done it, because I found if you write stuff out, you're more likely to contribute, they'll contribute to the small group what they've
Right.
written or drawn. And then out of those small groups, there will be interesting ideas that each small group or some small groups would want to share with the whole group. Because
Okay.
I think the experiences will
And
be,
Steve, isn't it the case that the template is not passed out? They don't see it until well into the conversation.
they'll see it after we finish with the booklet conversation.
Fine, that's helpful.
So I'm so excited about this, and a thought I was having as I looked at the booklet, which I also shared with my 15-year-old, thank you for that, is that, I think in my small group, if I'm allowed this agency, maybe just like asking them to find an image that resonates with them or that catches their eye first, and not read the whole booklet first, but finding an image that catches their eye, and then maybe like introducing themselves and sharing kind of what image they chose and why, just as a way of getting us talking before we jump in so that there's not like 12 to 15 minutes of silence first. And then I was thinking along the same lines as Kimberly about kind of the share out. And I don't know if this is too much to layer in or not, but I was thinking about the sentence frames I used to think, but now I think, because I bet after the students do some thinking about their futures and listen and talk with each other and engage the booklet, there will be a shift in their thinking about themselves or college or their future or whatever. And so even just like giving them post-its or something, just giving them a chance to share, like, I used to think this, but now I think this. And maybe that level of mindset shift is the share out that might be most useful for my group. So anyway, those are just some ideas that were generated, but I'm so excited about Friday.
We should bring post-it notes.
Yeah, I like that idea.
You should always have post-it notes.
Mhm.
I love that, Deborah.
All right, so during the groups, you're going to write post-it notes, because like we did last time, put stuff up on the board somewhere. Or is that part of the?
We could. What do you
I mean,
guys?
I don't know. That's what I took away from what Deborah was just saying, but I'm not sure that that's what she had in mind. Is Deborah still with us? We have Deborah's.
She is. She's trying not to be frightened that her daughter is about to get into a crash.
Her daughter's driving. I
I'm
see.
here.
Okay.
Here. No, I'm sorry. I think I was just ideating in response to the really exciting outline that came. I love your idea about making the post-it notes visible to others. And I think that's great. I don't know what I had in mind. I think I was just trying to give structure to, like, I'm trying to imagine, like, kids who don't necessarily know each other very well or know us. And I didn't want to give them like a full booklet to read for 20 minutes before breaking the ice a little bit. So that was my thinking at the outset. And then with the post-it note reflection at the end, my thought is that data might be useful for Harris Sekit in documenting the kind of mindset shifts that come out of an hour spent engaging in career exploration and goal setting. But also that, like, making that concrete with those sentence frames would be an accessible way for students to share kind of how they came in with one idea, but maybe left with another.
How about if we do this? We hand out post-it notes and just say, as you go through the booklet, as you have a reaction, a cartoon you like, or a sentence that resonates with you, or something that triggers, just write it out and stick it on the table. Put it in the middle of the table, and maybe we'll collect them.
That's so cool.
I have found post-it notes and reactions are incredibly valuable. Just writing something out induces a kid to speak up.
Right.
Mhm.
What really impressed me the last time is how they shared the stuff. You know, they passed around, they had reactions at each one, and then they passed them around. And
Yeah, Hunt was there. We had 4 volunteers last time because we didn't need each of us to sit at the tables. Actually, it was good that we didn't because they were doing artwork, and if we'd been there, we would have screwed it up. This is different. This is conversation. But Hunt and Sue and Mark and I were all surprised. We like, is this going to work? And the kids were so engaged and so interactive. And Deborah, we give you great. Oh, she just left. We give Deborah great credit for that because she taught us about tactile experiential learning.
but that was now that she's off, you can put who is she, some sort of an educator in her own right, or
She's
what?
a Fairfax County teacher and runs her own program.
Ah,
3 teachers coming Friday.
okay.
Um, we've reached the witching hour. Love any other comments? We're missing, I'm just looking at the list. Flynn told me he wouldn't come. Hallie couldn't come, and Jim, and then Charles. So say hi to all of them. I'll send them the recording. If we could meet a little bit before we start, 9:15 or so, you guys will have thought about it a little bit more. There's nothing like having it right in front of you, get you to think about it. And then I sent a note around earlier. I'm hoping some of you will be willing to be on camera for a conversation 10, 15 minutes afterwards before we get kicked out of the cafeteria because lunch comes for your reflections. What we found is when volunteers engage in this kind of stuff, they're energized. They've discovered that kids are really great to talk to and they have stuff to share, and we want to capture that. And if you're not willing to, that's fine. And what we'd like to do also is to get you to think about what we can do to improve the structures of these programs. We're still deep in the learning process. I mean, there's a lot that we need to learn, including how to use the booklets, how to use these templates, how to induce conversations. How do we create safe spaces for the kids to feel comfortable talking? And that's a big challenge in public high schools.
Hmm.
Right, Hans?
Quickly on the template, I see there's clouds and questions. Or the idea is the kids write answers in those clouds. Is
They write or they draw.
ah,
And the point is the same as what Deborah was saying, is to get them to put a pen to paper induces them to engage. And once they engage, then they're more likely to share.
okay. So we have post-it notes and their answers to these
Yes,
questions in the template. You're calling it,
yes,
aka dreams I have for my future draft too. Right?
yes. Peter, any parting thoughts?
I'm looking forward to meeting all of you in person, starting tomorrow and the next day.
And 5 more.
But
Okay.
aren't you up in somewhere up in New England where you were?
Yeah, I'm in New Hampshire, flying down to Dallas tomorrow at lunchtime.
Okay.
And we're
That's
having a strategic planning session for how to figure out about what to do with IYF. And Friday will be helpful for that.
Good. Well, have a safe trip
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Brooke. Thank you, Hunt.
Friday.
Take
Yeah.
care, guys.
Have a good night.
Buenas tardes.